Welcome back to another deep dive into the darkest corners of Fallout lore. Today's story is different. Today we are exploring something that exists in the shadows of canon, something that asks uncomfortable questions about who really survived the Great War and what they are planning. We are talking about the Siberian Ark, a Soviet supervault that makes Vault-Tek's experiments look like amateur hour, and the engineer who discovered their invasion plans and could not stay silent. This is the confession of senior engineer Dmitry Volkov, a man who broke through into an American subway and learned the worst thing a true believer can learn. Everything you were taught is a lie, and the people you were supposed to save do not need saving at all. Every fusion core in your power armor, every component keeping your synths functional, every piece of advanced technology you rely on, it all came from the Ark. And they put kill switches in everything, waiting for the moment when 100 million Soviet soldiers emerge from tunnels beneath your feet and flip the switch that turns your own infrastructure against you. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if you like the content. This entire script is narrated from the first-person perspective of a character from the Fallout universe. Their identity remains hidden throughout the story. After you have heard everything, try to guess which character is speaking in the comments below. The first person to guess correctly will have their comment pinned. My name is Senior Engineer Dmitry Volkov, Siberian Ark Expansion Division, Tunnel Team 447. 3 weeks ago, I broke through into an American subway system and discovered the worst thing a Soviet citizen can learn. The enemy we were supposed to save the world from is still alive, and they are not so different from us. I have been hiding in the tunnels since then, too afraid to go back, too confused to go forward, recording this because someone needs to understand what the Ark is planning and why I cannot be part of it anymore. I should start at the beginning, though the beginning feels like someone else's life now. I was born in Sector 12 in 2261, a third-generation Ark citizen, raised in the communist preservation state with its collective farms, its universal education, its absolute certainty that we were humanity's last hope. They showed us the surface readings every day in school, the radiation levels that supposedly made life impossible, the mutation rates that turned men into monsters, the barbarism of the scattered survivors who did not have the wisdom to build what we built. We were told that America had destroyed itself and taken most of the world with it, that nothing civilized could exist up there, that we were all that remained of human culture and dignity. The Siberian Ark is the greatest achievement in human engineering. 100 million people living in an underground city the size of Massachusetts, built beneath Siberia between 2048 and 2076. While the Americans wasted their resources on scattered experimental torture chambers they called vaults, while Vault-Tec ran its cruel games on unsuspecting citizens, we built one vault and we built it to work. We built it to preserve humanity, not to experiment on it. We built it with Soviet efficiency and communist ideals, where every citizen has food and shelter and purpose, where technology serves the people instead of corporations, where the collective good matters more than individual profit. I grew up believing this. I believed it when I studied engineering in our technical institutes. I believed it when I joined Tunnel Team 447 at age 23. I believed it every time I put on my excavation suit and carved another kilometer of tunnel through bedrock, extending the reach of Soviet civilization. Beneath a dead world, every meter of new tunnel was holy work. They told us, space for more agriculture, more industry, more proof that communism could build anything, could survive anything, could outlast even nuclear fire. Our technology surpassed America's even before the war. We had working fusion power in 2069 while they were still burning petroleum. We had quantum computing while they played with vacuum tubes and punch cards. We had real artificial intelligence while they struggled with basic automation. After the bombs fell, while surface survivors picked through ruins, we continued advancing. 200 years of uninterrupted research and development. No wars to distract us. No corporate sabotage to slow us down. Just pure scientific progress in service of the communist ideal. I became a tunnel engineer because expansion is everything in the Ark. We have been expanding for 200 years, east toward what used to be Alaska, south toward the ruins of China, west toward the ghost of Europe. A network of tunnels that now spans most of northern Asia, all connected to the main complex beneath Siberia. The Americans built 100 little vaults and lost contact with 90 of them. We built one arc and built tunnels to everywhere that mattered. I always wanted to work on the American expansion, the tunnels that cross beneath the Bering Strait and push down through Alaska toward the continental United States. It felt like the most important work, the final reclamation, the moment when Soviet civilization would finally spread across the entire world. They told us we were building infrastructure for eventual emergence, that someday we would rise to the surface and rebuild the world under proper guidance, that our tunnels would carry our superior system to every corner of the dead earth and bring order to chaos. 3 weeks ago, my team was boring through bedrock in what our maps indicated was unpopulated wilderness south of what used to be the Canadian border. The geological surveys showed nothing but rock and soil for another 50 kilometers before we would reach any pre-war structures. Standard expansion protocol: advance slowly, test continuously, seal any anomalies, report anything unusual. We had done this work 1,000 times, carved thousands of kilometers of tunnel without incident, just steady progress through the earth. Then we broke through into open space. The drill bit punched through the rock face, and suddenly there was nothing but air ahead of us, a void where solid stone should have been. Emergency protocols kicked in immediately, the excavation machine pulling back, safety systems sealing the breach with quick hardening foam. But not before I saw it. Not before I stood there in my excavation suit, staring through the dust cloud at what should not have existed. It was a subway tunnel. A pre-war American subway tunnel, and it was occupied. Not occupied by corpses, or by feral ghouls, or by the mutated horrors our propaganda had promised would inherit the surface. Occupied by people, living people, human people. A caravan of them, maybe 20 or 30, traveling through the tunnel with pack animals and children, with trade goods and weapons, with the unmistakable organization of a functioning society. I stood there frozen, my helmet lights cutting through the settling dust, and they stared back at me. A woman with a rifle, a man pulling children behind him, others reaching for weapons, shouting in English, pointing at the massive breach my machine had torn in their tunnel wall. They looked scared, certainly, confronted by a Soviet excavation suit emerging from solid rock, but they did not look like barbarians. They did not look like the radiation-scarred savages our instructors had described. They looked like people, just people, trying to survive, and apparently doing a decent job of it. My team leader shouted the order immediately. Seal the breach. Report the structural anomaly. Standard protocol for unexpected voids. Do not engage, do not communicate, do not compromise the mission parameters. I should have followed orders. That is what any loyal ARC citizen would do. That is what I was trained to do. What decades of education and communist discipline had prepared me to do without question. But I could not stop thinking about those faces. Those children. That woman's expression, not of mindless violence, but of protective fear. The organized way they were traveling, with scouts and guards and a supply train, like people who had routes and destinations and reasons to be somewhere. So I went back that night, alone. I slipped through before the sealant had fully hardened, squeezing through a gap barely wide enough for my body, leaving my excavation suit behind because it would not fit. I had to know, I had to see what we were supposedly saving the world from. I had to understand why those people looked so disappointingly normal. The surface was not dead. I need you to understand what a profound shock this was. 250 years of education, of daily surface readings, of radiation reports and mutation statistics and cultural analysis, all of it had painted the same picture. The surface was uninhabitable wasteland, populated by scattered degenerates barely clinging to existence. The ARC leadership showed us videos, played us radio intercepts of raiders and violence, displayed mutation rates that proved humanity could not survive long-term exposure. But the surface was not dead. It was alive. Scarred, certainly. Struggling, absolutely. But alive. I spent 3 days hiding in shadows, observing from concealment, listening to their conversations, watching their interactions. They had settlements, they had trade routes, they had governments, laws, cultural traditions. They had children who went to school, farmers who worked fields, merchants who argued about prices. They had hope. They talked about the future, about rebuilding, about making things better for the next generation. They did not talk like people waiting to be saved. They talked like people who were already saving themselves. I found a settlement called Rivet City built into an old aircraft carrier. I watched traders negotiate with merchants, saw guards protecting civilians, observed a functioning economy based on caps and barter. I listened to their radio stations, broadcasting news and music and community announcements. I read their signs advertising services and goods and opportunities. This was not barbarism. This was civilization, different from ours, certainly, rougher and more violent, but civilization nonetheless. And then I found the technology. In a workshop, I saw a merchant repairing a fusion core, the standardized high-grade nuclear battery that powers everything, from generators to that famous power armor the surface dwellers use. The core had Cyrillic markings etched into the casing, markings I recognized because I had seen them 1,000 times in ARC manufacturing facilities. The merchant did not notice them, could not read them, had no idea what they meant, but I knew because I had helped design the distribution system, had reviewed the schematics, had been part of the program. We made them, the ARC made them, and we put kill switches in all of them. I started looking more carefully after that, examining every piece of advanced technology I could find without drawing attention. Synth components in a trader's inventory, the neurological implants that program those artificial humans the Institute supposedly creates. ARC manufacture, ARC serial numbers, ARC shutdown codes embedded in the circuitry, advanced circuitry in a weapons dealer's stock, ARC design, quantum processors in a technical shop, ARC engineering. Every sophisticated piece of equipment, every device that seemed too advanced for salvage, every component that made these surface settlements function, all of it originated in the ARC. We have been seeding our technology into surface cultures for decades. They call it Operation Dependency in the planning documents I had clearance to see, though I never understood what it really meant until now. Making them rely on ARC-produced goods so we can control them when we emerge. Every fusion core that powers their generators, every advanced circuit that runs their equipment, every synth component that animates their artificial workers, all of it designed to fail on command. All of it waiting for a shutdown code that will be broadcast when we decide the surface has become too dependent to resist. If you are still with me after hearing this, hit that like and subscribe button, because what I am about to tell you gets so much worse. The plan is not some distant possibility. The invasion is scheduled for 2291, that is next year. 1 year from now, simultaneous emergence from tunnels beneath every major surface settlement our expansion has reached. New California Republic territory, Commonwealth settlements, capital Wasteland communities, everywhere. Within 6 months, total control. 100 million Soviet citizens pouring up from beneath their feet, armed with technology they cannot match, controlling every piece of advanced equipment they rely on, turning their own infrastructure against them. They do not think of it as invasion. That is what disturbs me most. The ARC leadership, the directorate, the military planners, they genuinely believe they are liberating the surface from its chaos and barbarism. They think they are bringing the benefits of communist organization to a world that failed capitalism's test. They see themselves as saviors, not conquerors. They look at the violence and the poverty and the struggle, and they think these people need us, that we are doing them a favor by taking control. But I have seen the surface now, and I do not see people who need saving. I see people who survived something we could not, who adapted to conditions we avoided, who built something new from something destroyed. They did not have a massive underground bunker prepared decades in advance. They did not have Soviet planning and resources and preparation. They had nothing but their determination and each other, and somehow they made it work. Not perfectly, not safely, not comfortably, but they made it work. The tunnels beneath New California Republic territory are nearly complete. I have seen the construction schedules because I worked on them, mapped the routes, calculated the structural integrity. Emergence points in every major city, Shady Sands, the Hub, New Vegas, all the population centers. The military has been moving troops into position for months, staging them in the deep tunnels, running exercises, preparing for the day they will burst through concealed access points and secure the surface before anyone understands what is happening. The same beneath the Commonwealth. Emergence points in Diamond City, Good Neighbor, settlements throughout the territory. The planning is meticulous, Soviet efficiency at its finest. Every scenario accounted for, every resistance possibility calculated, every tactical advantage maximized. The surface dwellers will not know what hit them. They will wake up one morning and find Soviet soldiers in their streets, Soviet flags on their buildings, Soviet control over every piece of advanced technology that makes their lives possible. And then the kill switches will activate. Every fusion core will die simultaneously. Every synth will shut down. Every advanced circuit will fry itself. The message will be clear. Resist and everything stops working. Cooperate and we restore your technology under our supervision. It is brilliant strategy. Truly brilliant. The kind of planning that made the Soviet Union dominant before the war. Control the infrastructure, control the technology, control the future. I cannot go back to the Ark. I understand that. Now, they will know I breached protocol, that I abandoned my post, that I spent days on the surface without authorization. The investigation will be thorough. The interrogation will be comprehensive. They will find out what I saw, what I learned, what I am thinking, and thought crime in the Ark ends with voluntary labor reassignment, which is not voluntary at all, which means spending the rest of your life in mining operations or toxic waste management or other work too dangerous for citizens the state still values. But I also cannot stay on the surface. I do not know the language well enough for complex conversation, learned only technical English for reading pre-war documentation. I do not know their customs or their social rules or their survival techniques. I am an underground engineer, trained for climate-controlled environments and organized society, not a wasteland survivor who knows how to find clean water or avoid radiation or negotiate with raiders. Every hour I spend hiding in these tunnels between the Ark and the surface, I become more aware of how completely unprepared I am for their world. So I hide in the spaces between, in abandoned sections of pre-war subway systems, in cave networks. Our tunnels intersected but did not incorporate in the margins where neither world claims territory. And I record everything I know, everything I learned, everything that someone needs to understand before 2291 arrives and changes everything. The Ark was built to preserve humanity. That was the original purpose, the founding principle, the reason our grandparents and great-grandparents worked themselves to exhaustion creating this impossible underground city. After the Great War, after the bombs fell and the radiation spread and civilization collapsed, Soviet leadership gathered everyone they could save and began construction. Not a bunker, not a shelter, but an Ark, a vessel to carry humanity through the flood of nuclear fire and emerge when the waters receded. But somewhere in 200 years, we forgot that humanity is not just us. We forgot that the people who survived on the surface, who endured radiation and starvation and violence, who rebuilt from nothing, they are humanity too. Maybe more purely than us, because they were tested in ways we cannot imagine and they did not break. We had every advantage, every resource, every preparation. They had nothing, and they survived anyway. I think about the children I saw in that caravan. They were dirty, certainly, wearing patched clothing and carrying makeshift toys, but they were laughing, playing some game with rocks and sticks, chasing each other through the tunnel while their parents kept watch, living their lives despite knowing the world their grandparents knew was gone forever. They did not look like they needed Soviet liberation. They looked like children anywhere, finding joy in difficult circumstances, giving their parents reason to keep fighting. What right do we have to take that from them? What right do we have to impose our system on people who never asked for it, who survived without it, who built something different and are proud of what they built? I was raised to believe communist organization is superior to chaos, that collective planning beats individual struggle, that we have a duty to spread our superior system. But superior, according to whom? According to people who hid underground while others faced the consequences of a war none of them started. The technology seeding operation started in 2250. I found the records while reviewing supply chain documentation, saw the distribution patterns, tracked the shipments, small amounts at first, just a few fusion cores left in strategic locations, some advanced components traded through intermediaries, establishing reliability without raising suspicion. As years passed, the volume increased. More cores, more circuits, more synth, components, more of everything that makes advanced technology possible. The surface dwellers welcomed it. Why would they not? A trader shows up with working fusion cores, charges reasonable prices, comes back regularly, builds a reputation. A merchant offers advanced circuits, synth components for their institute-sourced machines, technical equipment they cannot manufacture themselves. Of course they buy it. Of course they come to depend on it. Of course they build their infrastructure around the assumption this technology will continue flowing, and we counted on that. We planned for that. We weaponized their hope, turned their progress into a trap, made their advancement the mechanism of their own control. Every settlement that installs ARC manufactured fusion cores in their generators. Every community that repairs their equipment with ARC produced components. Every trader who stocks ARC technology, they all become dependent. They all become vulnerable. They all become targets. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the Wasteland, hit that like button. It really motivates me to create similar Fallout lore, because I need you to understand just how comprehensive this operation became, how thoroughly we infiltrated surface society without them ever knowing. The synth components are particularly insidious. The Institute creates those artificial humans, those biological machines that look and think and feel like real people, and they need components to function. Neural implants, control chips, programming interfaces, all the technology that makes a synth possible. The Institute makes the bodies, grows them from lab-cultured tissue using pre-war DNA, but the control components, those come from us. The ARC supplies them, has been supplying them for decades, because the Institute cannot manufacture them reliably. They do not know this. The Institute believes they developed the technology independently, that their research into synthetic humans produced these components through their own genius. They do not realize the critical parts arrive through trade networks, through intermediaries, through channels so complex and layered that no one sees the pattern, and every component has a kill switch. Every neural implant can be deactivated. Every control chip can be corrupted. When we broadcast the shutdown codes, every synth in the Commonwealth will stop functioning simultaneously. Can you imagine the chaos? The Institute relies on synths for everything: maintenance, security, labor, research assistance, surface operations. Their entire society runs on synthetic workers. And in one moment, they will all stop. The Institute will be crippled, their greatest achievement turned off like a light switch, and they will never understand why. They will never know that their technology was never truly theirs, that Soviet engineering underlies everything they thought they created. The same applies to the Brotherhood of Steel. Those zealots who hoard technology and patrol in their power armor, they depend on fusion cores just like everyone else. More than anyone else, actually, because power armor drains cores rapidly. They stockpile them, trade for them, scavenge them from pre-war sites. And nearly half their stockpile originated in the ARC, seeded through supply chains over decades. When the cores die, when the kill switches activate, the Brotherhood's mobility ends. Their advantage ends. Their power armor becomes a metal prison, too heavy to move in without power, trapping soldiers inside useless shells. I used to take pride in this planning. I used to review these operations and feel satisfaction at Soviet strategic superiority, at our ability to think decades ahead, to position assets perfectly, to execute plans with such precision that the enemy never suspects until too late. I thought we were protecting ourselves, ensuring the safety of ARC citizens, creating conditions for peaceful emergence. But these are not enemies. That is what I finally understand. These are not soldiers who chose to threaten us, not governments that declared war on Soviet principles, not dangers that require military response. These are survivors. These are people who endured hell and came out the other side, still believing in tomorrow. And we are planning to take that tomorrow away from them because we think we know better how they should live. The Directorate justifies this with theory. They talk about historical materialism, about the inevitable triumph of communist organization over capitalist chaos, about our duty to guide humanity toward proper development. They show graphs of violence, statistics, and poverty rates and mortality data, proving mathematically that surface society is failing, that intervention is necessary, that we have a moral obligation to impose order. But they never ask the surface dwellers what they want. They never consider that maybe, just maybe, these people prefer their flawed freedom to our controlled efficiency. They never wonder if surviving the apocalypse earned you the right to choose your own future, even if that future is messier and more dangerous than what we would design for you. I spent my third night on the surface in an abandoned building watching a settlement meeting. They were arguing about water rights, about who could draw from which well and how much, about whether to expand the purification system or build a new one. It was loud. It was contentious. People shouted, accused each other of selfishness, threatened to leave the settlement if decisions went against them. Everything the Ark would consider evidence of dysfunction. But then they voted. Everyone got a say. Even the newest settlers, even the poorest farmers, even the traders who only visited occasionally. They counted hands, argued about the count, counted again, and made a decision. Nobody was perfectly happy. Several people stormed out angry. But the decision was made democratically, messily, in a way that gave everyone voice. The Ark does not work like that. The Ark is efficient. The Directorate makes decisions based on expert analysis, long-term planning, and communist principles. Citizens are consulted through proper channels, meaning they can submit requests that committees review and approve or deny based on collective good. It is orderly, it is rational. It is fair in the way that central planning is fair, distributing resources according to need and merit, but it is not free. And I never understood the difference until I watched those surface dwellers argue themselves hoarse and then accept a decision half of them disagreed with, because at least they got to participate. At least their voices were heard. At least they chose together. The Ark would look at that settlement meeting and see inefficiency. They would calculate the time wasted on argument, the emotional energy spent on conflict, the potential for wrong decisions made by uninformed majority vote. They would design a better system, a smarter system, a system where experts determine water rights based on optimal distribution algorithms, and nobody has to shout. But they would miss the point entirely. Those surface dwellers were not just deciding about water. They were practicing being human together, maintaining the social bonds that keep communities functional, ensuring everyone felt invested in their collective survival. The decision mattered less than the process. The outcome mattered less than the participation. And we are going to take that away from them. We are going to emerge from tunnels they never knew existed and tell them we have a better way, more efficient, more scientific, more rational. We are going to activate our kill switches and watch their technology fail, then offer to restore it if they accept Soviet guidance. We are going to give them a choice that is not really a choice: submit or return to pre-industrial conditions. Some will resist. The military planning accounts for this. Projected resistance rates vary by region. Higher in New California Republic territory, where they have functioning government and military structure. Lower in scattered Commonwealth settlements, where centralized coordination is difficult. But all resistance projections assume the same thing. Once the technology fails, once fusion cores die, and advanced equipment stops working, resistance becomes unsustainable. They will fight with conventional weapons for a while, bullets and explosives and desperation. But against Soviet power armor that does not rely on their fusion cores, against our energy weapons that use different power systems, against our numerical superiority and tactical coordination, conventional resistance cannot last. The planning documents estimate 6 months maximum before all major population centers accept Soviet administration. Another year before the remaining holdouts are isolated and irrelevant. And then the re-education begins. That is actually what they call it in the cultural integration plans, re-education. Teaching surface dwellers proper communist principles, correcting their capitalist misconceptions, showing them the benefits of collective organization. Children will attend Ark schools, learning Soviet history and Marxist theory. Adults will join work collectives, contributing to planned economy under expert supervision. The old ways, the wasteland ways, will be gradually eliminated as inefficient and primitive. Within a generation, they project, surface culture will be fully integrated. The violence will end because there will be no more competing factions, no more resource scarcity, no more reasons to fight. The poverty will end because central planning will ensure equitable distribution. The suffering will end because Soviet organization will create stability, and humanity will finally be united under one system, one philosophy, one vision of the... It sounds good when they explain it. It sounds rational and humane and progressive. It sounds like salvation. But I keep thinking about those children playing in the tunnel. They were not playing Soviet games or following Soviet rules. They were making up their own games with their own rules that changed whenever someone had a better idea. They were being creative and chaotic and free in ways Ark children never are, never can be. Because Ark education is structured and supervised and designed to produce productive citizens, What happens to those children when Soviet re-education begins? What happens to their games, their stories, their ways of being that developed in the wasteland without our input? Do they get to keep any of it? Or does it all get classified as primitive behavior that needs correction? Do they get to remember their parents' struggles and victories? Or does that become dangerous counter-revolutionary history? I found a radio station broadcasting from somewhere in the capital Wasteland. Galaxy News Radio, they call it, run by someone named Three Dog, who plays pre-war music and talks about current events and encourages people to fight the good fight. His commentary is vulgar sometimes, unsophisticated certainly, full of capitalist assumptions and wasteland morality. But it is also passionate and honest and deeply committed to human dignity in ways that moved me despite myself. He talked about a settlement that defended itself from super mutants, about ordinary people with hunting rifles and determination who protected their children from monsters. He celebrated their courage, mourned their losses, reminded his listeners that every person who stands up to evil matters. It was propaganda, obviously, designed to maintain morale and encourage resistance to threats. But it was also beautiful in its simplicity, its faith that individual action has meaning. The Ark does not have anything like that. We have educational broadcasts and cultural programming and news reports, all carefully produced to inform and inspire, all reviewed by committees to ensure appropriate messaging. We do not have someone shouting into a microphone about the good fight, because the fight is not individual, it is collective, and it is already won because we survived and built something permanent. But Three Dog's fight is not won. His fight continues every day, every hour, every moment someone chooses courage over fear, or kindness over cruelty, or hope over despair. His fight is what made those surface dwellers into people worth knowing, people who did not give up when everything was lost, people who built civilization from ruins without instruction manuals or central planning. And we are going to shut him down. When Soviet forces emerge, when cultural integration begins, Galaxy News Radio will be replaced with proper broadcasts. Three Dog will be re-educated or silenced. The Wasteland stories will be archived as historical curiosities. The good fight will be declared over, mission accomplished, no further resistance necessary. I cannot be part of that. I thought I could. Thought I was serving humanity by helping build the infrastructure for emergence. Thought I was doing good work advancing Soviet civilization. But I was building a cage. I was preparing chains. I was helping destroy the very thing that makes surface survival meaningful, which is that they chose it, earned it, built it themselves. The military staging areas are massive. I have been in some of them, inspected the structural integrity, verified the excavation quality. Underground barracks housing thousands of soldiers, weapons depots stocked with decades of production, vehicle bays full of machinery the surface has never seen. Everything is ready. Everything is positioned. Everything waits for the order that will come in 2291. Some of the soldiers are volunteers, true believers who want to bring Soviet salvation to the end, surface. Others are conscripts fulfilling mandatory service, doing their duty without questioning why. None of them have been to the surface. None of them have met the people they will be controlling. They know only what they have been taught, that surface dwellers are primitive, violent, desperately in need of guidance. I want to tell them the truth. I want to describe the woman with the rifle protecting her children, the settlement meeting where everyone got a voice, the traitor who repaired fusion cores without knowing they contained kill switches. I want to ask them if this sounds like people who need conquering, if this sounds like a threat that requires military response. But I am one person recording a confession in a tunnel, hiding from both sides because I belong to neither, and my testimony will not change military orders or directorate decisions. The invasion will happen whether I speak or stay silent. The kill switches will activate whether I warn anyone or hide forever. The surface will fall to Soviet control because we prepared too well, planned too carefully, positioned our pieces too perfectly. Unless someone finds the tunnel entrances and collapses them. That is the only counter-strategy I can imagine. The Ark's entire invasion plan depends on surprise, on simultaneous emergence from concealed positions, on surface forces being overwhelmed before they can coordinate response. But the tunnels are physical infrastructure. They can be destroyed. They can be collapsed with enough explosives in the right positions. And if the tunnels are gone, if the emergence points are sealed, the invasion cannot happen as planned. The entrances are disguised carefully. Some appear to be natural cave systems, geological formations that happen to extend deeper than expected. Others are hidden in abandoned pre-war infrastructure, subway tunnels that go too deep, mine shafts that connect to something larger. A few are concealed in building basements, behind false walls, in places nobody would think to look without reason. But they all have certain characteristics. They all show signs of recent excavation if you know what to look for. Too smooth, too regular, tool marks instead of erosion patterns. They all have subtle ventilation systems because the Ark cannot risk gas buildup in the staging areas. They all have power infrastructure nearby, sometimes visible as unusual cable runs or transformer stations in odd locations. Someone with engineering knowledge could find them. Someone with determination could map them. Someone with explosives could collapse them. Not all of them, probably. The network is too extensive for complete elimination, but enough to disrupt the simultaneous emergence strategy, enough to buy time for surface forces to coordinate, enough to turn a precision invasion into a piecemeal disaster. I know where approximately 40 emergence points are located. I worked on them, designed their concealment, calculated their structural requirements. I could draw maps showing their positions, their access angles, their vulnerable points. I could provide the technical specifications someone would need to collapse them effectively. I could give surface engineers everything they need to sabotage decades of Ark preparation. But I do not know how to deliver this information. I cannot approach settlements openly because I speak broken English with heavy accent, because I look wrong and act wrong and know nothing about Wasteland social protocols. I cannot broadcast on their radio frequencies because I do not have transmission equipment. I cannot write messages and leave them because most surface dwellers have limited literacy and my handwriting uses Cyrillic characters they cannot read. So I record this testimony in a tunnel, speaking slowly so the words are clear, hoping somehow it reaches someone who can use it. I describe the locations as best I can using surface landmarks. I explain the structural weaknesses. I beg someone, anyone, to find these tunnels and destroy them before next year. I know I should feel like a traitor. I am betraying my nation, my people, everything I was raised to believe and value. I am sabotaging decades of planning and preparation. I am potentially condemning Ark citizens to permanent underground existence, to giving up our dream of surface emergence, to accepting that we will never reclaim the world. But I keep thinking about those children. They were laughing in a tunnel, playing their games, living their lives in a world that tried to kill them and failed. They did not ask to be liberated. They did not request Soviet guidance. They were doing fine, or fine enough, building something new from something destroyed. Do they deserve to have that taken away? Do they deserve to wake up one morning and find their future has been planned, without their consent, their culture scheduled for elimination, their freedom traded for efficiency? Even if Soviet control would reduce violence and poverty and suffering, even if communist organization would give them stability and security, do we have the right to impose it? I do not think we do. And that is my final betrayal, my ultimate thought crime. I do not believe Soviet emergence is justified. Not like this, not through deception and dependency and invasion. If we want to join the surface world, we should ask permission. We should offer cooperation, not control. We should earn trust instead of exploiting vulnerability. But the Directorate will never accept that approach. They cannot imagine surface dwellers as equals, cannot envision cooperation between Soviet citizens and Wasteland survivors, cannot trust people they view as primitive to make proper decisions. They will emerge as planned. They will activate the kill switches as scheduled. They will begin cultural integration according to their timeline, unless the tunnels are collapsed first. I have spent days now mapping what I spy. Remember, sketching tunnel layouts on salvaged paper with a broken pencil I found in an abandoned office. My hands shake when I draw because I know what these maps represent. The destruction of my life's work, the failure of Soviet planning, the collapse of everything my people built toward. But I draw anyway, because those children deserve their future more than we deserve our invasion. The closest emergence point to my current position is beneath a settlement the locals call Megaton. The name comes from an unexploded atomic bomb in the town center, which tells you everything you need to know about surface dweller priorities and risk assessment. They built their entire community around a live nuclear weapon. The Ark would never tolerate such irrationality. We would have disarmed the bomb immediately, relocated the settlement to a safer position, established proper safety protocols. But Megaton thrives anyway. I listened to travelers talking about it at a trading post, describing the walls made from salvaged aircraft, the bomb church where some worship the weapon itself, the sheriff who maintains order through personal authority rather than institutional power. It sounds chaotic and dangerous and completely unsustainable by any rational metric. Yet it sustains. People live there, raise families there, build businesses there, apparently unbothered by the fact that their town could vaporize at any moment. The Ark emergence point is hidden in the ruins of a pre-war facility approximately 2 kilometers north of the settlement. The tunnel angles up through bedrock and terminates in what appears to be a collapsed maintenance basement. The concealment is excellent. The structural integrity is perfect. The tactical position is ideal for rapid deployment into the settlement. Destroy the false collapse wall. Emerge with overwhelming force. Secure the bomb as both symbolic and strategic asset. Establish control before anyone understands what happened. I could walk there in an hour. I could find the entrance, mark it somehow, leave evidence that would lead a curious explorer to investigate. But what then? Even if someone finds the entrance, even if they understand what it represents, do they have the resources to collapse it? The tunnel is reinforced with Soviet engineering, designed to withstand earthquakes and ground settlement. Collapsing it would require significant explosives placed at precise structural points. And that is just one entrance. 40 more that I know about, probably hundreds across the entire network that other engineering teams installed. Even if I could somehow communicate the location of every entrance I worked on, even if surface forces could collapse all of them, other tunnels would remain. The invasion might be delayed, disrupted, forced to adapt, but probably not prevented entirely, unless the surface unites against us. That is the scenario the Ark planners fear most. The one contingency they cannot fully account for: coordinated resistance across all major factions. New California Republic military forces, Brotherhood of Steel technology, Institute scientific capabilities, railroad intelligence networks, even raider groups temporarily setting aside their violence to fight a common enemy. If the surface world understood the threat, if they worked together, they might have a chance. But surface factions do not work together. That is their great weakness, the flaw that makes Soviet victory inevitable. New California Republic fights the Brotherhood over technology. The Brotherhood fights the Institute over synths. The Railroad fights the Institute over freedom. Raiders fight everyone over resources. Dozens of smaller factions squabble over territory and ideology and ancient grudges. They cannot unite because they do not trust each other, cannot coordinate because they have no shared authority, cannot plan long-term because survival consumes all their attention. The Ark knows this. The Ark planned for this. The invasion strategy specifically exploits surface division, emerging in multiple regions simultaneously, so no single faction can mount effective response, offering different terms to different groups to prevent alliance formation, using their own conflicts against them. It is brilliant strategy, truly brilliant, the kind of analysis that made Soviet planning superior even before the war. But maybe brilliance is not the same as rightness. Maybe strategic superiority does not justify conquest. Maybe being smarter and more organized and better prepared does not give you moral authority over people who survived worse than you can imagine. I found a memorial yesterday, hidden in a ruined building. Someone had carved names into a wall, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. No dates, no explanations, just names carefully etched into concrete. I stood there reading them for an hour, wondering who they were, what they meant to whoever carved them. Family members lost in the war? Friends who died in the Wasteland? Strangers whose names deserved remembering? The Ark does not have memorials like that. We have official monuments to Soviet achievement, to the founders who built the Ark, to the workers who died during construction, all very proper and organized and meaningful in their way. But nothing like this raw wall of names, this desperate attempt to prove that specific people mattered, that their individual existence was worth preserving even if just as letters in stone. Whoever carved those names believed individual human lives have value beyond their contribution to collective survival. They believed remembering matters, even when remembering serves no practical purpose. They believed in something the Ark has lost, if we ever had it. The idea that you are more than your function, more than your role, more than your service to the state. And we are going to teach them differently. We are going to explain that individual attachment is inefficient, that collective good supersedes personal loss, that proper communist consciousness means understanding your value comes from your contribution to society. We are going to re-educate them out of carving names on walls, out of mourning individuals instead of celebrating collective achievement, out of believing that one person can matter more than the system. I cannot do it. I cannot be part of it. Even if I could return to the Ark without facing interrogation, even if I could resume my work without suspicion, I could not go back to tunnel expansion knowing what I know now. I could not calculate structural loads for emergence points, knowing those calculations enable invasion. I could not review supply chain logistics, knowing those supplies include kill switches designed to cripple people who never threatened us. So I stay in the margins, in the spaces between worlds, recording testimony that may never reach anyone who can use it. I have enough food for maybe another week, salvaged from abandoned buildings and supplemented with water from questionable sources. My Ark-issued clothing is wearing out. My engineering knowledge is useless here. My survival prospects are poor, but I am free. For the first time in my life, I am genuinely free. Not free in the way the Ark defines freedom, which means freedom from want and fear through collective security. Free in the way those surface dwellers are free, which means freedom to make mistakes, to choose poorly, to live according to my own conscience, even when that conscience contradicts everything I was taught. It is terrifying. It is exhilarating. It is lonely beyond anything I imagined, but it is mine. If this confession meant something to you, leave a like. It is the only way I know you liked the video, because I need to believe my testimony matters, that choosing the surface over the Ark was not just betrayal, but something more, something necessary, something that might somehow make a difference. The invasion will come. I cannot stop it alone. Probably dozens of engineers would need to defect. Hundreds of soldiers would need to refuse orders. The entire directorate would need to reconsider their fundamental assumptions about surface dwellers and Soviet destiny. None of that will happen. The Ark has prepared for 200 years. The plans are set. The timeline is fixed. But maybe one person can complicate those plans slightly. Maybe one confession can plant doubt in someone's mind. Maybe one defector's maps can help one settlement prepare, help one faction understand the threat, help one group of children keep their laughter a little longer. I am leaving this recording in a sealed container near the megaton emergence point, along with my maps and technical specifications and everything I know about Ark invasion strategy. If you find this, if you are listening to my voice right now, you need to understand what is coming and how little time remains. Find the tunnels. They look like natural caves, like abandoned infrastructure, like places nobody would bother investigating, but they go too deep, too regular, too carefully maintained. Find them and collapse them. Use explosives at the support points I have marked on my maps. Target the ventilation systems. Block the access corridors. Make emergence impossible, or at least costly enough that the Ark reconsiders. And if you cannot collapse them, if the resources are not available or the time is too short, at least prepare. Coordinate between factions, share intelligence, stockpile weapons that do not rely on fusion cores, develop communication networks that cannot be shut down remotely, build alliances that can survive the shock of simultaneous invasion. The Ark expects you to be divided. They expect you to fight each other while they take control. They expect your factions to compete rather than cooperate. Prove them wrong. Show them that surface dwellers understand something Soviet planning cannot account for. That freedom matters more than efficiency, that choosing together beats being told what to do, that surviving the apocalypse earns you the right to determine your own future. I wish I could do more. I wish I could sabotage the invasion from inside, could convince other engineers to defect, could somehow stop what is coming. But I am one person who made one choice, and that will have to be enough. The Ark was built to preserve humanity. I believed that for 26 years. But humanity is not something you preserve in underground cities, protected from radiation and hardship and consequence. Humanity is what happens when people face impossible circumstances and keep trying anyway, keep building anyway, keep hoping anyway. You are humanity. You, the surface dwellers the Ark thinks need saving. You preserved yourselves when we hid. You rebuilt when we planned. You survived when we calculated. Survival was impossible, and you deserve to keep surviving on your own terms, in your own way, free from Soviet guidance or anyone else's idea of what your future should be. So I am choosing you. I am choosing the surface, not because it is better than the Ark in any measurable way, not because Wasteland society is superior to communist organization, but because you earned it and we did not, and that matters more than efficiency or planning or 200 years of preparation. Find the tunnels, collapse them, and if you meet an engineer named Dmitri who does not know how anything works up here, who speaks terrible English and understands nothing about caps or trading or radiation protection, maybe show him how to survive in a world that is not dead after all. Maybe show him that choosing the harder path, the uncertain path, the path without central planning or guaranteed outcomes was the right choice. Maybe prove to him that freedom is worth the cost, that independence justifies the struggle, that being truly human means accepting risk instead of avoiding it. I am going to try to reach Diamond City. I heard traders mention it as a major settlement, relatively safe, built inside an old baseball stadium. Maybe they need engineers there. Maybe they can use someone who knows Soviet technology, who can explain the kill switches, who can help prepare for what is coming. Maybe they will listen to a defector's warning, even if they cannot fully trust a defector's motives. Or maybe I will die in the wasteland, like so many others, killed by radiation or raiders, or simply by not knowing enough to survive. But at least I will die free. At least I will die having chosen something, having stood for something, having believed that some people somewhere deserved the truth. The Ark will emerge in 2291. The kill switches will activate. The invasion will begin. I cannot stop it, but I tried, I chose, I defected, and that will have to be enough.